welcome once again to another edition of our Government at Work program, a program brought to you by the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration and hosted by yours truly, Keith Scarborough. It's a program designed to inform and educate all citizens and residents of Nevis, both at home and abroad, of the many positive developments that are taking place here on the island of Nevis. It's another wonderful Thursday evening here on the island of Nevis, and it's a time when we all look forward to a night filled with information as it pertains to the continued good governance of the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration. We therefore look forward each week to go deep into discussions with the ministers of government, the advisors, the permanent secretaries, the department heads, as well as top officials from the various statutory corporations here on the island of Nevis. We are all aware, of course, that there are those who prefer to indulge in their own creative negatives, but on this program we make every effort to ask the right questions, to get the right answers that would give our listeners and viewers a true reflection of what is really happening in the land that we all call home. This program, I remind you, is broadcast live on VON Radio every Thursday evening from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Then we broadcast on Nevis Television on Sunday evenings from 8:30 p.m. This and other Government at Work programs, as well as our Bird's Eye View programs, can also be seen on Facebook, YouTube, and the NTV web page. We shall take a short break, and when I return, I shall introduce my guest for this evening's program to you. So stay locked down to the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, 860 AM.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Folks, I am pleased to have as my guest this evening the Honorable Troy Liburd, Minister with responsibility for youth, sports and education et al. Honorable, good evening and welcome once again to our Government at Work program.
Good evening, King, and it's such a pleasure to be here tonight at Government at Work. You know, I think you have chosen an opportune time to have me on. I know that you're always clicking, your mind is always thinking. Based on what happened yesterday, I think today is the right time to have me on. So you had it well planned. So I'm very, very happy to be here this evening, you know, to bring a report on what I have been doing and what the government have been doing. And, you know, certainly I think it's going to be an hour and a half of, you know, jam-packed action. Of course, I'm always happy to be here at Von Radio. I'm normally in that seat that we call the hot seat, but I'm always happy to be over in this seat because it means that somebody else is leading the interview. And I'm happy to be, you know, in your hands tonight, King.
All right, we are indeed happy to have you as well. You don't come often enough, but we are always happy when you come. Now, I hope you got some much-needed rest after that exciting day at the Athletic Stadium yesterday. We have quite a bit to discuss this evening, including, so let's get right into it. The Nevis Athletics season has basically come to a close with the hosting of the Inter-Primary School Sports, which took place yesterday at the Athletic Stadium in Long Point. We shall reflect on that fantastic event a bit later, but first I want to look at the entire athletic season this year, as well as the upcoming Carifta Games, which is due to start in just over 2 weeks' time. Before we get into the discussion, however, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the athletic stadium itself. Because a couple of months ago, it suffered some damage as a result of a freak storm that passed through, which had some effect on the hosting of some of the meets this year. So I want to start there. Due to that said freak storm, some of the seating and tents that were erected was lifted right out of the stadium. That unfortunate incident, of course, gave us the opportunity to see what could happen if a real storm came through. It also gave us the opportunity to ensure that something like that never happens again so easily. So tell us, what measures were put in place to ensure that it never happens again?
Wonderful. Thank you very much, King. And I think what happened on that day, I think it was a Thursday evening. I don't remember the exact date. A Wednesday or Thursday. And we had some excessive winds on that particular evening. I don't know where those winds came from, but the winds kicked up. And I remember being at home and hearing the winds howling and wondering, those tents at the track would be in some trouble. And then I got a picture from somebody, of what looked like one of the stands over that big wall, and I thought to myself, how is this possible? The particular stands, of course, we have some metal bleacher stands, and what we have chosen to do from time to time when we have sports is to cover them with tents to ensure that people are out of the sun. So in the case of the particular stand that went over, the tents were fastened to the stand itself. So the tents, they were not fastened to the ground. In that case, we were using some tents that were, I think, 15 by 20 or 15 by 15, perhaps 15 by 15. So they weren't big enough. The ones that we have some 20 by 20 tents, and we have the 15 by 15. Those 15 by 15, they are in the care of the social services department. Those are the yellow and white ones. And those ones, they were fastened to the stands themselves. So when the wind kicked up, the wind lifted, the tents acted as sails. And since the tents were fastened to the stands themselves and not to the ground, they were able to, the wind getting under them was able to pick them up and drag them over the wall. What we have done since then is to make sure that all of the tents that we are using, that they are fastened or staked to the ground. So we are not now staking the tents to the stands. So we are staking them to the ground. I think most of what we are using now are 20 by 20, and in the case of those smaller stands, the tents would actually come all the way out to the fence line.
Okay.
So they pass the front of the stand and come out to the fence line. In the case of the bigger stands, the two stands closest to the finish line, the tents are halfway up those stands, but we still fix them in the front down to the ground. So we are hopeful that we won't have the same thing happening again. Another measure that we have put in place is to ensure that we don't leave up the tents. Okay? In the case where we had left them up, that was because we had a lot of sports happening one behind the other, and it was more efficient to leave them up rather than having the guys coming out there and taking them down and putting them back up. It is a tedious process to put these tents into the stands. So we have, done what we have done to ensure that the same thing won't repeat. Another thing that I have been doing is using the apps. We have modern technology now. So once tents are up at the track, I would usually take a check of the apps. We have a nice app called Windy that tells you what the wind speed and wind direction is likely to be over a few days period, and I would normally check those once I know that we have tents up at the track.
Great. We also had some difficulties with the lighting system, although I was made to understand that had nothing to do with the freak storm. But it took a while before the lighting system can be fully restored. What really caused the damage to the lighting system, and why did it take so long to get all the lights back up and running?
You're asking me electrician questions. Now, of course, you would know that the track was built, I think, from 2016 into 2017. That's when the construction of the track was done. That's about 7 or 8 years ago. So we would have had the lighting system in about 7 or 8 years. And with anything electronic, you're going to have a certain shelf life to it. Anything that's exposed to the elements and so on. So we would have noticed that some of the lights, started going out, and we had the electrician who worked along with the company. There's a company from the US who was contracted originally to put up the lights and provide the lights and so on. It's a company called Moscow. And so we had a technician who worked along with them when the lights were erected. That's Shamari Delashley. And so once we had the difficulties with the lights and we realized that we had a problem, I think this was late last year, we had an evaluation done on the lighting system. Of course, because I think we had a 10-year warranty on the lighting system. And so there was some conversation back and forth between the Department of Sports, our electrician, and also the company in the United States. Long story short, the evaluation said that we needed some parts and so on to get the lights back up. We would have subsequently bought those lights. Took some time for the implements, not the lights, the drivers, sorry. We would have bought the drivers and so on, and it took some time to manufacture them. These are not things that the company, I guess, had there in stock or in the warehouse. So they manufactured them once the order was placed. That took a little bit of time, and then they were shipped out to us. And then we had them installed. Upon installing the drivers, however, we realized that we had some additional issues where some of the lighting fixtures themselves seem to have been bad. And these are LED lights. They're not simply connected systems. These are lights that have their own circuitry inside of them. So there's certain things inside the circuitry started to go bad that would prevent the lights from coming on. And so, we made our adjustments, and what we were able to ensure was that for the inter-primary meet that we had adequate lighting. And King, I think you were there, and I think you would have witnessed that the lighting and so on was adequate.
Yes.
We, however, have a bit more work to do to bring the system back up to 100%.
Okay, great. You say I asked him a question like an electrician, but you answered like an electrician.
Well, King, I'm an engineer by trade, and when you go through basic electricity is a part of the coursework, so I do understand electricity on a theoretical
scale.
It's not something that I want to touch, but I do understand the theoretical of the electricity.
Okay, great. Now, you and I normally would have attended most, if not all, of the primary school sports over the years. I must admit that this year I did not get to attend as much as in years gone by due to some extra duties. How about you? Did you get a chance to take in the usual amount?
Yes, I was able to attend, I think, maybe all except 2 or 3. And those would have been days when I was either not on island or I had some other pressing government engagement, so I couldn't make it. Once I'm available, I try to make it to the school sports. One, because I like sports.
I know that.
So that's one. I like sports, and so I want to make it to the sports. And 2, because as the minister with responsibility for education and also sports, I think it's important for me to go out and to let the children see me. Most of them know me. I try to know a lot of the children because I think it's important to go out and give them that support. I think the children, they operate a lot better when they see their parents out there, when they see their family members, when they see people who they know in high office out there supporting them. So I always try to go out and give that support to our young people because I think they need the support and I think they deserve our support also.
True. Now, I got the impression from some person that because of the early start to this year's athletic season, some of the meets was not up to their normal high standards. You would have seen more than me. So what's your take on this year's primary school athletic meets in particular?
I think the record speaks for itself, and I think the competition speaks for itself based on what we saw on display yesterday. We saw a very high level of competition, and I think for those who didn't get to go to the school sports, yesterday would have been a reflection of sort of what happened at the various school sports. Of course, inter-primary, you're seeing the best of the best, and at the school sports you would have some athletes who are outstanding, and then you would have other persons where, especially in the cases of the smaller schools, you would have everybody basically going out and running. So some students, they're not athletic, but they're going out and doing their best, and we must encourage them at all times. So to say that the level, I don't subscribe to that. I think those who are serious athletes, we would know it, and those who are going out to, just to run and so on, we also really value them and so on. But the level of the sports, I think it's all about the entertainment value and so on, and so I enjoy it. So I don't think the level of competition is down in any way. And I myself was thinking that we were a bit early this year in terms of sports. But speaking to some of the coaches and so on, they were able to give me the dates from last year. And so we were pretty much on the same type of dates as last year. Maybe one or two of the schools came up a bit more with their sporting activities. And I find that our schools are very competitive. So they're trying to be as early as possible with their sports meets so that then they can then pin down their inter-primary teams and start that serious training on that long drive towards inter-primary. I think they want more time to train towards inter-primary. So
clearly, you could have seen it. From what I saw it where the early part of the season, he looked like he caught some of the students kind of off guard. They were not running, but by time yesterday's meet came, they were fully back up to speed. Now, the Jinxing Up Classic was held here in Nevis for the second year in a row, and we saw the Charleston Secondary School, who was looking to three-peat, only managed to place third this time around. Well, I personally wasn't surprised at all, because I attended both high school sports this year, and I thought the athletes looked a little unfit and a little unprepared. So I wasn't too surprised. They were not prepared for the championship. What do you think was the reason for the poor showing this year?
I wouldn't say it's a poor showing, and I wouldn't chalk it up to fitness or lack of fitness, because quite a lot of our athletes, the student athletes who are serious athletes, they're all in training clubs and so on now. And these students start their serious track and field training in September. For the most part. So they're doing little off-season stuff in the off-season, and in September they're starting serious training. So by the time January, February come around, they're in really good shape. I think in the case of Charleston Secondary would have had some athletes who left school who were really good athletes. So you think about Newton and those guys who are off in university, and there's a young lady in university now. You see, I don't want to forget anybody's names. I think she's the daughter of Ulubala.
Okay.
Yes. And I think the twin Shelley, that was an excellent athlete herself in school, and she's off in university also. So they would have lost some students who were exceptional and who would have really held up that banner for them. So sometimes when you lose an exceptional athlete, it might seem like you take a little dip, but I don't see it as a dip, because I've seen athletes in the schools who have that potential, and as they get older and they mature, they're going to be able to come and bring in those gold medals that the schools need.
Okay. I hear your explanation. But when the local high school championship was held between both high schools, it was clear then that the athletes by that time had gotten some training and was looking much better. My question to you, therefore, is, do you think that perhaps the CSS and GSS sports were held too early this year? Or you think that the athletes should have been better prepared, knowing that the Jinxing Classic was coming up and they needed to defend their title?
I wouldn't want to weigh in too much on that. I think the schools have their committees that deal with sports and so on. They set the dates. I leave that to the schools. The coaches are getting the athletes ready, and they know when they want their athletes to peak. The season could be kind of long. I think we have Carifta games coming up, and unfortunately we weren't able to have the federal inter-high as yet. That, of course, I hope would be happening sometime soon, but sometimes coaches could be looking at their athletes running probably their best time a little later on in the season, because you don't want to peak them too early and then the athletes drop down when you get to those big events. So maybe they feel like they have them at maybe 80% or 85%, and they feel like, okay, this is good enough to win at the school sport level. But then you would want to get them revved up to 100 maybe for the inter-high, or probably for Carifta trial, in the case of those athletes who have that aspiration to want to get into the Carifta team. So it could be any number of factors, but I don't think that the students would be able to hold that peak form all the way through the season. So, we got to allow the coaches to do what they do. And I think we have some good coaches around here, and you want to give them an opportunity to bring their athletes along according to the plan that they have.
Okay, all right. Now, the idea of including Anguilla for the high school championship this year seems to have gone on well with everyone I spoke to. Any plans to not only reach out to them again for next year, but perhaps to include St. Martin, Montserrat, Stacia, etc., and turn this meet into another major athletic meet on our sporting calendar? Because it can happen. I see the possibility.
I like where you're going with it. Actually, for this year, we reached out to Anguilla, and we also reached out to Montserrat. And we particularly chose those two islands because Montserrat has one public secondary school. Anguilla also has one public secondary school. So the opportunities for their students to compete in a setting such as this against their peers and so on, competing against another school, those opportunities are limited in the case of both Anguilla and Montserrat. And so that's why we looked at inviting those schools to come over and participate. Unfortunately, Montserrat couldn't make it this year, and Anguilla, as we all know, they came over and we had a wonderful time together. But the whole idea behind it was the fact that we were trying to drum up a little bit more excitement about our local inter-high that we have here on Nevis. One of the main reasons for that inter-high, it gives our athletes another avenue. It gives them the opportunity to compete with our two public secondary schools and the private secondary school here on Nevis, having the athletes compete against one another. So that gives us another opportunity. But it's also an opportunity for the department to raise funds, and we would normally use that fund to assist our two major high schools in going over to St. Kitts for the inter-high school championship there, because inter-high is an expensive proposition. We look at the sports as we're just going over and competing, but it's very expensive. The students have to have lodging, they have to eat every day. Some students might need shoes, we have to provide the clothing and so on. So this is expensive for the schools to provide. So that activity serves as a fundraising activity for both of the schools. And so we wanted to drum up a bit more excitement about it. We want the public to come out and support it, and we feel like the best way to get the public to come out and support and to spend some money, because we need that money to support our athletes. We felt that the best way to do that is maybe to reach out to our sister islands and see if we can bring in some more athletes and create a bit more excitement around the sport. So that's the whole idea of why we tried to do that.
True. And of course, it will help to get the athletes into better shape for nationals when it comes.
Yes, definitely.
Right. Now, speaking of nationals, the national championship, as you alluded to earlier, was postponed this year, much to the disappointment, of course, of many, including the athletes. The reason, as I understand it, was that the repairs to the Kim Collins Stadium was still ongoing. The big question that everyone was asking is, why wasn't the meet brought back to Nevis?
Well, I can't answer that question. I would not be in a position to answer the question. What I can say is that last year the Athletics Association, SKN Athletics, reached out to the Ministry of Sports here on Nevis and asked if we were in a position to host the sports. And we, of course, knowing what the situation was with the Kim Collins Stadium, we were happy to host the sports. This year, we of course, they didn't reach out in the same way. I guess the hope was that the Kim Collins Stadium would be ready. So, of course, it's a federation, and we have to work together in partnership. Whatever happens, with the federation, whether it's good or bad, it's all of us. So, sure, we are here. We would be happy to host at any time. But, the meet is put on by the SKN Athletics, and at the end of the day, it's their decision to make.
Any idea when that meet might eventually takes place? I know they're still trying to have it this year, but any idea?
I think the discussions are ongoing between the ministry here on Nevis, the ministry over on St. Kitts, and the SKN Athletics. And I think in short order we might have an announcement about, if and when that activity would happen. My hope is that it will happen, and my hope is that it happens sooner rather than later.
Okay, great. Now, I want to focus your attention now on the just concluded Inter-Primary School Athletic Championship, undoubtedly the biggest meet in the Federation. But let's discuss the hosting of this meet itself first, because as the meet continues to go by leaps and bounds, the job of hosting is also becoming more demanding. Talk to us a little about the hosting of this event this year.
King, quite a lot goes into Inter-Primary. Inter-Primary has grown into being the single biggest one-day event on the island of Nevis. Single biggest one-day event on Nevis. I see the agriculture food fair now is a big thing.
Yes.
It's 2 days agriculture food fair. Yes, it's a big thing, but I don't think at any one particular time you have as much people at the agriculture fair as what you would have at the Nevis Athletic Stadium for the Inter-Primary. So I think Inter-Primary is still bigger in terms of the sheer number of people. When I looked at the parking lot yesterday, I went up on the top of the smaller wooden building that we have there, and I looked around at the parking lot on the low side towards the seaside. Full, cars full over there. The parking lot on this side towards Brown Hill, that also was full. And inside the venue itself was full. And to host an event like that, it takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of planning and so on. I want to, of course, commend the team. It takes a lot of teamwork. Our team is led by Nicola Fraser, who is our sports person at education, and Alj Newton, who is the acting director of sports at the moment. Those two are the chairpersons for the activity. But of course, the PS is playing a big role. PS Claxton and the assistant PS Jamie Claxton. Both of them, all over. We have the PEO who's all over, and all of the members of the committee. It's a big committee. I can't call everybody's name. I wish I had the list so I could just call everybody's name. And then you have all of our volunteers and so on, King. And it's a lot of volunteers. We have Mr. Vogo, who is the meat director, calling a few names. Dwayne Warner, everybody know him as Dwayne. Dwayne is the meat manager for the sport. We have Mr. Warren moving, and I think everybody remember when Warren was a big athlete. as a youngster going to school up in Gingerland, and you're trying to be an athlete, or like me who trying to be an athlete. I wanted to be like Warren because Warren was a top athlete. So Warren is our chief referee, and then we have Mr. Denville Francis Blake from St. Kitts, who is also a chief referee. And then we have Janita Matthews. I think everybody knows Janita. Janita is with us every year. Carol Liburd, Renee Anthony, Corvin, our chief starter, of course. And everybody knows Corvin as our first Olympian. And we have Datriel Stanley. He works at sports, and he's the equipment manager. Christopher Johnson, technical manager. Conrad Smitten, who I don't think sports could keep in Nevis, and you don't see Conrad Smitten, you know. Bryce Fifield, that's Roger Fifield's son, so that's a young person coming up who is volunteering. Sherman Keynes, and we know that the Keynes, they're, steep in sports. Diana Brown at the photo finish, Sylvia Clark at the photo finish. Jeffrey Lewis, the assistant starter. Jeffrey is always around. And we have Emmanuel Eddie Richards, who is the person in charge of the entire facility for the sports. He's the one who deals with all the vendors and so on. So it's a big team. We have a lot of volunteers and so on, people who come and they give of their time without pay. And in a time like today, when everybody is calling for pay for everything, King, it warms my heart to see that we still have people out there who come out and they work. And interprimary is a full day of work. Okay, it's a lot of work. And these people come out and they give of their all to ensure that we have the type of activity that we have. And we can't say enough thank you to people like those. All of our volunteers, we have a lot of students, high schoolers and so on. They come out and they volunteer and they work hard all day. And I really, really appreciate all of them, all of our volunteers.
Great. Now the event is now attracting sponsorship from a number of large businesses in both St. Kitts and Nevis. Talk to us a little about the impact that those sponsorships are having on the overall hosting of that major event.
King, before I do that, just let me get 1 second, because I want to shout out Lester Blackett.
Oh.
Because Blackett would have passed away sometime after the last interprimary and before this one. And I want to shout him out for his contribution to interprimary over the years, and not just his contribution, but what he did to create the whole event. And we can't overstate his impact. Okay. And so I want to give a big shout out to Mr. Blackett. I remember in 2018 when we were moving to the Nevis Athletic Stadium from the park, I had insisted at that time that I wanted to honor Mr. Blackett. At that time, Blackett was the meat director and so on. He was still the one doing pretty much everything for interprimary. And we decided that I was new at education. I was new, and I wanted to honor him for the work that he had done over the years. And I remember Mr. Barrett, who was the PS at the time, telling me that the big problem I'm going to have is keeping him away from doing all of the things that he would normally do, because he's not going to want to sit there and be no honoree. Okay? And in retrospect, looking at it now in hindsight, because hindsight is 2020, I'm very happy that I insisted on doing it at that time. So, I feel good about that. And that dovetails me right into talking about sponsorship, because one of the things that they would have done back in the day was to get golf on board with the inter-primary championships. And for many, many years, the inter-primary championship was known as the Golf Insurance Inter-Primary Championship. In fact, golf has been with the inter-primary championship for 31 years. This year makes 31 years. An activity like this in a small island like Nevis can't survive without champions. And golf insurance and the whole Evelyn group, Arthur Evelyn and his family, they would have been some of the champions for keeping inter-primary around. So first and foremost, when we talk about sponsorship, I want to highlight golf, because their contribution has been invaluable. You can't put a price on what golf has done for inter-primary championships here on Nevis. They help us to build it from something that was back in the day when I used to try to run for inter-primary and so on, and I would mostly be looking at the barefoot of those guys who were in front of me. back in those days, it was not big sporting event. To now, it is the single biggest thing that is bringing out all the people in Nevis, and golf help us to really build that. We also have Bonnie, who have come on board, and this is the third year that Bonnie is with us. And Bonnie has come on board in a big way. When we talk to people, sometimes we like to tell people, put your money where your mouth is, and this is something that Bonnie has come on board and they have done, and they have allowed us to grow the sport. We went to golf when Bonnie approached us. And well, how it went is I had a conversation with Bonnie, and they said we might be interested in your inter-primary. And so we went and we had a conversation with golf, who were the sole title sponsors. And golf said to us, this is our baby too, and just as much as you want it to go, we want it to go. And so if Bonnie is coming on board in a big way to assist the sports, then we have no problem in sharing the title sponsorship with them. So kudos again to golf for being so magnanimous and so on and so generous. So golf, Bonnie now has come on board, and they are putting their money where their mouth is. They are investing in the young people of Nevis, and based on the type of activity that Bonnie does, because they are an international bank, so their clients aren't really people here on Nevis. They do business here, they are registered here, but their clientele is not a local clientele. So they're doing quite a lot now to contribute, in spite of the fact that their clientele is not here on Nevis. So this is a public good for them. So they have come up on board in a big way. And then we have the Sinkis Nevis Anguilla National Bank, and they have also been on board. Sinkis Nevis National Bank is a partner with the Ministry of Education, so they're not just on board with us for inter-primary championships. They are a partner with us on a whole lot of things that we do throughout the year. I would have had a conversation with Mr. Crossman, the managing director of the bank. We had a really good conversation about sponsorship and so on. And what he would have said to me is, I want to be a partner with education, and their contribution is not just to the sport, but to other things that we're doing throughout the year. And then, of course, we have Rams, the good food people, and Rams have come on board in a big way with us. One of the things that we have to do when we are having inter-primary is to feed everybody. We have all of these athletes, and they're out there. Some of them are there from 9 o'clock in the morning until maybe 7, 8 o'clock at night, and they have to eat. The officials have to eat. Everybody have to eat, and so we have to provide that food for them. And Rams has been, a great partner in helping us to provide for them. We of course also have Flo. Flo have come on board in a big way. We're doing live streaming, and people from all around the world, Nevisians all over the diaspora, they're always tuned into the Inter-Primary Championships, and not just for Inter-Primary also, because Flo has given us the internet at the track for use all throughout the sporting season. So all of our sports live streams that we did, they were powered by Flo, of course, and so we want to thank Flo. We also had Nevis spring water, because people have to drink water, and so they came on board in a really, really big way to help us. And we also had Kester Dorset Landscaping, because you have to cut the field, so he would have been gracious in coming out and cutting the whole field for us free of charge for the Inter-Primary Championships. And we also have sponsors who sponsor the schools, and they don't get enough airplay, so I just want to give them a little bit of airplay right now. We have the Bank of Nevis. Again, Bank of Nevis is one of the sponsors for the Charlestown Primary School. They would have sponsored the Inter-High, our Nevis Inter-High. That is the Bank of Nevis Inter-High. So they are also the sponsors of the Charlestown Primary School, along with Orange Enterprises Nevis. And then we have National Bank again. And National Bank have been the long-standing sponsors of the St. Thomas's Primary School. Then we have Sol, and Sol are the sponsors of the Elizabeth Pemberton Primary School. And then we have Precision Engineering Group. They sponsor the Montessori Academy. We have Sagicor Life Insurance. They are the sponsors of the VOJN Primary School. We have Islander Water Sports and Oaly Beach Resorts, and they sponsor the St. James Primary School. We have TDC Limited, and they are the sponsors of the Joycelyn Liburd Primary School. We have the Bank of Nevis Limited again, and also SL Hosford Company Limited, and they are the sponsors of the Ivor Walters Primary School. We have the Islander Water Sports again, and also the Nevis Cooperative Credit Union, and they are the sponsors of Nevis Academy. And then we have Forum Deco and Tropical Boost, and they are the sponsors of the Maud Cross Preparatory School. And that's it for the school sponsors. So quite a lot of sponsors, quite a lot of corporate entities coming together to ensure that this thing happens. This thing can't happen without money, and it can't happen without a lot of money. You see all these schools over there in their nice uniforms, and all of our children wearing their tracks and all kind of thing. I think, well, our parents, the parents, some parents don't have it, but, they dig their money, they dig their hand in their pocket, and they find that money, make sure that their children go over there, and the children are well, prepared, and they're looking good. And I really appreciate that.
True. Now, I want to take you back to the Gulf Insurance for a little bit, because each year they would have sent representatives to observe this event. I am sure that you would have met with Gulf Insurance representatives who came for this year's meet. So tell me, what sort of feedback have you gotten from them regarding the growth of not only this year's meet, but how the meet itself has grown over the years?
Well, oddly enough, that's a really good question, because I would have sat with Gulf at my office just, I think, the day before the sports, and we reminisced about, the activity and how it was in the early days and how it has really grown. And yesterday at the meet, speaking with the representatives for Gulf, they really feel good coming in from Trinidad, which Trinidad has big stadiums and so on, coming into Nevis, which is a smaller place. We're 36 square miles, just 10,000 people. 10,000 people fit into stadiums in Trinidad.
Yep.
And we are 10,000 people. And to see what we can do here with our our inter-primary championships. I remember the gentleman saying to me that, you know, the type of passion that he sees here for the inter-primary, he doesn't see that anywhere else, you know. Division people are really, really passionate about this, and so golf, I think they love it. They really enjoy it. They come every year, and I think they feel good to know that they have been a part of this. They have been a part of making this, and this is something that goes right through the fabric of the Nevision people.
True. Folks, you're listening to Government at Work. My guest this evening is the Honorable Troy Liburd. We shall take a short break, and when we return, we shall continue with our discussions here on Government at Work.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Honorable, this primary school sports has taken on a competitive spirit way beyond what we have been accustomed to over the years. The meet now has parents, teachers, coaches, and even athletes now more involved than ever before. The children are running their heart out for their school, and the supporters of the various schools are very vocal in their support. This has to be pleasing to all involved, but especially for the Ministry and Department of Sports. Share that experience with us.
Well, I think the inter-primary has developed to the point where there's a lot of passion involved in the activity. If we look at what transpired yesterday, coming down to the end of the activity itself, it was a nail biter. Okay, this sports came down to the last race. It was a nail biter. You had some persons who started to get quiet, and then and so on. So there's a lot of emotion that's invested in it, and I think most of it is good. Most of it is good energy. Of course, Charlestown Primary, they would have come out the winners, and they have six peated. So, and the funny thing is, I was at Charlestown Primary maybe a few weeks before the event, and they got me to go up and say something, and I asked the students, are you going to win inter-primary? Are you going to 6 feet? And they told me, yes, I'm going to 6 feet. And I told them, okay, make sure you all don't tape me. And I said, well, I'll be rooting for you all to 6 feet, okay? And the thing about it is that I really am rooting for them, in the sense that it is not easy for anybody at all to go out and win 6 times in a row.
Oh, yes.
And so we have to really respect them for that. We have to respect the hard work that they put in. I think the coaches they're doing an exceptional job, but I think the school itself and the student body of the school, they take on a certain level of pride where they say, look, we are champions and we have to go out and win. I think yesterday quite a lot of persons were rooting for Ivor Walters, because down to, I think, maybe the second or third to last event, Ivor Walters was one up on the gold medal, and you could imagine that most of the people in the stadium were rooting for Ivor Walters, and that's understandable.
Yes.
But I think that a champion school such as Charlestown Primary, they say, well, if you want to beat me, you have to take it from me.
Yes.
Okay? I'm not going to lie down and just take, the beat. You have to take it from us. And so Charlestown, they rose to the occasion, and they They won that relay. I think the girls 4x4 relay, and that is what gave them the victory, because at the end of the sport they were tied. They were tied in terms of gold medals, and it's a gold medal meet. So this meet actually came down to the silver medals, where Charlestown Primary have had 15 silver medals, while the Ivor Walters Primary had 11. So both schools had 16 golds. So actually it's a tie on gold medals, and it had to go down to the silver medal. So those two schools, they were. Ivor Walters was ahead, I think, for most of the day, but it was real competition. And I heard people say in the evening, this is one of the best inter-primary that I ever came to, because they had that suspense going down even into the last event. And to see that we could have had a meet like that, I think it was, really, really good. Some persons were saying, St. Thomas should have let Ivor Walters.
I heard all kind of talk about that today.
Take that last year. And I marvel when I hear these kind of things, to see the public being so engaged in it. For me, what I took away from this, I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed pretty much all of it. I enjoyed seeing what CPS was able to do. I enjoyed seeing what Ivor Walters was able to do. I enjoyed seeing the pride. But one of the things that all through the sports yesterday, whenever I got the medal count and I looked at it, the thing that jumped out at me the most about the meet was the amount of medals, the amount of gold medals that St. James Primary was winning. That is what stood out to me the most in the meet, because do you know that St. James Primary, I think the student body, the entire school, is something like 40-something. Some of these schools on their track and field team, they have 40, I think. I believe they can register up to 40-something students. So that's like the entire population of St. James Primary. St. James Primary, I am told, has 18 children on their track team, the inter-primary track team. So with 18 students on your track team, and an entire student body of just over 40, St. James placed fourth, and overall in the meet. And it's not a far fourth, because we had CPS and Ivor Walters on 16 gold medals each. Then we had the St. Thomas's Primary on 10 gold medals. And understand that St. Thomas's Primary won the last race of the day, which was the boys 4x4.
Yeah.
So before that, they were on 9 gold medals. And guess who else is on 9 gold medals? St. James's Primary, But the interesting thing about this, King, the interesting thing about this is that St. James Primary has 1 silver medal. One solitary silver medal and two bronze medal. So St. James Primary won 9 gold medals, 1 silver and 2 bronze.
Wow.
And so
with just 18 athletes,
they were 1 away from 2 gold medals away from being 3rd overall, and they weren't too far behind first and second.
That's true.
And as the smallest public school, to see that they beat EPPS, who was perennially our B division when we had the B division. They were perennially our B division winners. Joycelyn Liburd Primary, which is a big school, they beat Joycelyn Liburd
what
Primary.
happened to the Joycelyn Liburd this year?
Well, I don't know, but the story that I'm taking from this is St. James.
Yes.
And I realize St. James has some outstanding athletes who were able to give them some medals.
Yes.
I think there was a young lady, Lagi, the grade 6.
Yes.
The grade 6 young lady. I think she was Victrix Adorum last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Last year.
If I'm not mistaken, I think she was an exceptional athlete with all the potential in the world, and a few other good athletes. To think that a small school like that could be 9 gold medals. And King, one of the things about this, I remember when this meet was a points meet, and when I became the Minister of Education, looking at inter-primary and having conversations with people, I wanted to see how we could improve the product of inter-primary. And one of the things that I looked at, one of the things that I discussed with various people were changing the meet from a points meet to a gold medal meet. And in having the conversation, there were some people who were for it and some people who were against it. More people were against it than who were for it. And I looked at it and I looked at it and I looked at it and thought about it and thought about it. And it was just coming back to me all the time that the smaller schools, they don't have an opportunity to win if it's points, because they don't have the number of athletes. They're not going to get the number of silver and bronze medals. And I think at the time we were counting 4th place and 5th place. They would get points. So the bigger schools always had opportunity to score points. So it would be difficult for the smaller schools. So the only way the smaller schools had a chance is if you're going to do this gold medal type system. And here is the gold medal system manifesting itself where St. James, with 9 gold medals, were 4th. They only had 1 silver and 1 bronze. So the athletes were either giving you gold, basically gold or nothing.
Yes.
You know, and they are 4th. So I'm happy that we decided to make that change. We took some criticism when we made that change, but I'm happy that we made the change. When I decided, look, let's go ahead and make the change, I got a lot of pushback. A lot of people were saying, Minister, you're sure? And I said, well, let them blame me. You know, I will take the blame on this. And so I'm very happy that is one of the things that I would have stood up and said, let's get that done.
Good move, good move. Now, at this time, I would like to say congratulations to the Charleston Primary School, who continues to prove that it's indeed the school to beat, and without doubt, the undisputed champions of primary school athletics, not only here in Nevis, but throughout the entire federation. Let me ask you this, why do you think they have been so successful year after year? I mean, like you said, 6 feet is not easy.
It's not easy, of course. Charlestown has a long tradition of being good, especially in sports. Football, cricket, but especially track and field. Okay? Charlestown Primary is our biggest primary school in terms of population. And so that, of course, would have a part to play in it. And of course, a school could be big, but then they don't take any pride in winning and so on. But this is a school that takes pride in winning. The parents who are around the school and support the school, you know, they are a big part of the school culture. And the school culture is that they're supposed to win, or they must win, you know. There are people, parents and so on around Charlestown Primary who every opportunity they get, they would meet me and tell me, oh, you don't want Charlestown to win, you know. I know you don't want Charlestown to win, because their culture is such that they think they're supposed to win. And if they hear anybody being a little bit neutral or analytical, automatically you're against them, you know. And that could be a good thing, because there is a pride about them, you know. There's a pride about them wanting to win, and they instill that into the students. So the athletes are always going to try a little bit harder, because they have that pride. They know that over the years the others who came before them have won, and so they want to be a part of that winning. And anytime Charlestown doesn't win at something, you know, they're in mourning. They're in mourning about it. So
yes, that's true. No.
So they have a culture that they want to win, and I love that about them.
Sure.
You know, and I think it's something that some of the other schools could emulate in terms of their athletes going out there and giving that extra. I know all of the athletes go out and they push hard, but sometimes when you feel like you're part of something that's just bigger than just you, it puts something in you
Yep.
for you to even go above and beyond what you can do.
True, true. Now, I also want to say congratulations to the Ivor Walters School, who performed exceptionally well at this year's meet and just narrowly missed out in silver category. Were you surprised at all that the Ivor Walters Primary did so well this year, beating out the other two normal serious contenders, St. Thomas's Primary and Joycelyn Liburd Primary?
No, I wasn't surprised. As you would have said, I've been to the sports this year, and there was a lot of optimism around Ivor Walters Primary School this year, especially after the sports meet. They were the team that people were talking about, that this year is Ivor Walters' year. Everywhere that I went, I heard this year is Ivor Walters' year, and they had a lot of confidence. I think the coaches, they deserve quite a lot of commendation. Mr. Harvey and Miss Slater and all of the others, all of the other parents and all of the other people in the community. School has a brand new principal, Miss Brown, so all of them need to come in for some high commendation for the work that they did, and the athletes. I think the athletes should come in for some high commendation. I would venture to say that, there were a few. This was Ivor Walters' meet to lose, really. I think there was a little mishap with an athlete, but of course that's excusable because it's a young athlete, and we should never push our young athletes or try to scold them in any way, especially when they're young, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and so on. That's the time children are still having fun in running, and I think there was a mishap with a relay baton, and if not for that, then we could have been talking about Ivor Walters as we could have easily been talking about Ivor Walters as the champions this year. So I think they did an excellent job. The students should come in for some really, really high commendation.
True. Now, what advice do you have for those schools who would have lost some 6 years in a row now to the Charleston Primary School? What do you suggest they do if they want to take it over the top?
Well, it's a gold medal meet, okay? And I think the coaches and the parents and the school support system, they know the athletes that they have. I think the coaches understand track and field. They know they might have an athlete that's injured or whatever the case may be, or some reason why a particular athlete did not perform up to the standard that they expected, or perhaps they had an athlete who was accustomed to winning, and this year somebody in another school worked harder and surpassed that athlete. They know what they have to do for the next upcoming meet, and so it's to look at the potential that they have, look at the students that they have, and try to get the most that they could get out of the athletes. We have to remember that these are children at the end of the day, and that this thing, while we're trying to make competition out of it, it still has to be fun.
Yes.
Fun for the children, we have to make sure that they're not getting any injuries and that type of thing, and if they have injuries, that the injuries are reported and that the children could get proper treatment. I mean, for me, King, I love inter-primary, but for me, what I would really like to see is a few of our athletes who have that potential, that this potential is translated into something bigger, to where these athletes could get on a senior level, and we could have another Kim Collins, we could have another world champion, somebody go to the Olympics and do what Julian Alfred just did. That is my goal. That is what I would like to see.
I hear you. Now, I am happy to see that we are now introducing our primary school athletes to the field events, and I'm even more pleased to see that the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration is investing in the equipment that is needed for the field events. Because if we are to excel in track and field, we will have to improve our efforts, especially in the field events. Let me ask you this. Do we now have all the necessary equipment needed for us to comfortably host the meets that we are hoping to attract in the future?
King, what I would say in terms of we have a world-class track, of course. We all know that. We would have received a set of hurdles, which is a complete set of hurdles, so we can do hurdling events and so on. We have good facilities for long jump. Recently, the ministry would have purchased high jump beds, so we actually have 2 sets of high jump beds at the athletic stadium. We have javelins, we have all these type of things. So once the coaches are able to instill the training or the proper training into the athletes, then the sky is the limit, really. When it comes to the field events, we need coaching. These athletes would need coaching. In terms of hosting like regional events and so on, we do have the capacity to host some regional events, of course. You would know that for the bigger ones, we would probably need to get that stadium in play. But that is something that we are working on. But I keep wanting to stress that we can't run before we walk.
True.
And we can't just try to fly. We have to make sure that we are able to walk on the ground first. And the most important part of the facility was getting that track down.
Yes.
Our athletes now have a track that is second to none to train on and to run on for competition. Okay? At the end of the day, the stadium is going to be for people like you and I who want to sit in the stadium and be comfortable. But at the end of the day, the track is where the children, the track is where the athletes have to go out and excel, and we have the track.
True.
So it's not that we are not going to try to work on the stadium. Yes, we are. But the stadium is going to take funding. At all times, we need to remember we are living on a 36 square mile island with 10,000 people or 13,000 people and maybe about 6,000 something working people.
Sure.
So our tax base is not a big tax base. So
that is true.
yeah.
Let me ask you this though. Do you see it happening before 2027?
Well, I wanted to. As the Minister of Sports, I would love if we can get going on a stadium. At the end of the day, that's going to be a decision that the government is going to have to come together and make. We're going to have to look at it as a cabinet, see where we can get the funding from to do it. Of course, we are trying to do some big things, such as the expansion of the airport, which of course is going to bring more into the island. And of course we've heard a lot of talk about geothermal, which is something that's also going to take a lot of resources. But if something like geothermal can happen, then it means that we're not spending that. I don't even remember what the numbers look like, but I would want to think it's closer to something like $30 million that we spend every year on fuel and so on.
Okay.
So we won't have to be spending that 30 million per year on fuel. As a matter of fact, now government might actually be making some money. So we would have something else that we could put into things like stadium and so on. So we are trying to do things that we think are important for the growth of the island of Nevis.
Okay, great. Now, I had the Honorable Latoya Jones here as my guest last week, a former athlete and administrator of track and field here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we spoke at length about the fact that there is great excitement amongst the parents, teachers and athletes for the inter-primary school championship. But when those same athletes get to the secondary school level, the support structure is not there in terms of encouragement, motivation for them to continue on as athletes. The focus shifts instead to the academics, and there must be a balancing act if we are to take our track and field to the next level. You are the Minister of Education, so you are in a position to make that transition be a lot smoother. What do you suggest be done? so that those primary school athletes could pursue their athletics while pursuing their academics at the same time, because there must be a balance.
You know, I've heard that. I don't know if I particularly agree with that sentiment. I think that we put a lot into track and field at the primary level, and I think that we put a lot into track and field at the secondary level also. So I don't think there's a drop-off in terms of the interest in track and field at the secondary level. I think there's a drop-off in terms of the interest of the students in track and field. There are students who, once they get to primary school, they start to feel like they're more developed. You know, as people used to say colloquially long time ago, the girls start to think they're women, and the boys start to think they're men. So they don't respond in the same way as they would respond at the primary level. And in terms of the parents, sometimes the parents allow the students to sort of have their own way, in a sense. At the primary level, at primary school, you know, some children might be saying, oh, you know, I don't really want to run. And the teacher would be, well, you got to run. You know, and especially with inter-primary being so competitive. And if they know that you're a top athlete, there's no way that you're not running. Even if you're not the top athlete, and they know that they need you for the relay to ensure that that school team is going to win, there's no way that you're not running. And there's no way that you could go home and tell your parent that you're not running, because your parent is a part of that whole thing with the school. You know, we were talking about Charleston Primary and how the parents, they're bought into the system.
Yeah.
So there's no way that you're not running. Okay. There's not that same buy-in at the secondary, where the parent is going to say, well, you're running. You know. So that is that is a part of it. And so we see some of our top athletes, or athletes who we thought, you know, this one has the potential to go far, that some of them drift off and they're no longer involved in running. And you know, some of our athletes, they tend to specialize. I'm more interested in cricket. I'm more interested in something else, and so they are now not running. And of course, some of them also focus on the academics. So there are a lot of different factors. So I don't think it's a case where, you know, the school is saying we are prioritizing academics more over the athletics, because the schools, they want to win also. They want to go to inter-high and win. CSS has come close a few times in recent years, and I think they also want to win. But a big part of it is, you know, the parents, that buy-in is probably not there, and the students themselves, you know, thinking, hey, you know, I'm past the point where I need to run.
You have a point there, but Latoya made Latoya, to her credit, gave some good recommendations as to how we can find ways and means to overcome this problem. Let me outline some of them for you. One, according to her, the parents need to be told that the athletics can be beneficial to their children's academics, which is true. And two, that the government should partner with the local track clubs to further develop the athletes as they enter the secondary school system. And she suggested that the government not only offer equipment to the club, but financial assistance as well. And three, that the government itself gets more involved with the training of our athletes and coaches, and where possible with athletic scholarship as well. I'd like to hear your thoughts on her recommendation, which I thought were very good.
Yeah, I agree in a sense, and I think that a lot of what she has recommended are things that are already happening, in the sense that the government has invested massively in the facility, in the track. I think that's a huge investment that the government has made. So that facility has been provided for the athletes to train and so on. The government has invested in equipment. We spoke about, having javelins and all of those type of things, having the beds for the jumping and so on. But also we've assisted with other equipment, small equipment that the coaches and so on can use for the training of the athletes. And in the case of where athletes need to go over to St. Kitts or anything for training, we have assisted. In terms of the coaching, I think it was last year or the year before that we partnered with the SKN Athletics to bring Glenn Mills here to the federation. Glenn Mills is a coach of the world's greatest sprinter, Usain Bolt, and he came here for a workshop. The government would have assisted in getting his services here. So, these are things that we are trying to do to improve the coaching and so on. And where the coaches come to us and where the schools come and they say, look, we need this type of assistance, we try to offer it as much as possible. Even with our inter-high, the government offers quite a lot of assistance to, the schools for the athletes to go over to St. Kitts and stay in St. Kitts and so on for the inter-high. So the government has been partnering.
That is true. Now, we're kind of running out of time, and I don't want to leave before we talk a little bit about the Carifta Games. The Carifta Games is coming up on April 19th to 21st in Trinidad and Tobago. I understand that we have some 6 athletes from Nevis who will be participating in these games. Will you, as the Minister of Sports, be meeting with those athletes before they depart? Any plans to do that?
Yes, I expect to meet with them. I think we have 5 athletes from Nevis.
The swimming guy.
That's the swimming. Carifta is not the same Carifta as the swimming has their own Carifta, so it's not the same. I don't think
it was part of this year Carifta.
It's Carifta. It's the same Carifta, but at the same time, when you have track and field Carifta happening, you have swimming happening.
Okay.
So for the track and field Carifta, we have Keziah Phillip, Kimani Newton, Abijah Nemdari, Josiah Matthew, and Najib Kelly. They are going to be traveling to Trinidad, and then we also have the swimming athletes. So I do expect to meet with them, and the NIA has provided a contribution to SKN Athletics, which
next question.
We provided we provided assistance last year. I think we provided assistance the year before before that also, and we provided assistance this year already. To assist. We of course are playing our part. We know we have athletes from Nevis who are going, so we are not going to shrug our responsibility. So we have already come forward with assistance.
Okay. Would you or anyone from the ministry or the Department of Sports be traveling with the athletes, if not as an official, maybe as a supporter?
I think we have persons from Nevis who are going to be part of the team. In the past, people like Corvin Wallace have gone as coaches and so on. I'm not sure who's on the lineup this year to go as a coach. I have also explored going. Up to yesterday, I had a conversation with Delwyn Delaney about what the arrangements are. So it's something that I'm looking into. If it's possible, then I would probably go as a supporter. And if not, then I know parents and so on would usually travel with the athletes and so on and go down. So, but we all would be rooting for our team, St. Kitts Nevis, and of course, especially for our athletes from Nevis.
Yes, of course. No, I have been calling for an athletic association to be formed here in Nevis, so that we can have a governing body for athletics here in Nevis, especially in light of the fact that, like I said earlier, that track and field is on the rise here in Nevis. I'm aware, of course, that there is a National Athletic Association, but it doesn't speak directly to the development of the athletics or the athletes here in Nevis. Miss Jones, when she was here, who is a former member of the National Athletic Association and a past athlete herself, has expressed a willingness to assist in that regard. I believe that with her assistance, your assistance, my assistance, Jamie, of course, LJ, Nicola, that this association can become a reality before the end of 2025. I would like to hear your thoughts on that suggestion, really.
I think there are pros and cons to having a local association. Of course, the International Olympic Committee would only recognize
we understand.
one body, one association. But of course, there's room for a local association that can work with that association. There are members from Nevis who are part of the SKN Athletics. I think Dwayne Warner is the vice president, and we also have a few other persons who are on the executive of that body. I think some of our clubs here in Nevis, they are members of that association also. In terms of these associations, they're normally non-governmental organizations.
And that's why we're trying to start it up, and then you have the general meeting down the road where they will choose the president and vice president.
The thing about these organizations is there has to be that willingness to stick to it.
True.
And we would have to, people would have to be serious about it. It would have to be, the clubs would have to be involved, the track and field clubs, because of course they have the athletes. And then we would see from a government perspective, how we can assist, what type of assistance we can give to the clubs. Of course, we give a lot of assistance through our schools. We assist the clubs where it's feasible to do that. But the thing is, to have an organization such as this, they would have to have that buy-in from the clubs themselves.
Ultimately, that's where it will go. This is just a starting point to get it organized. And once you organize it, then...
Well, government can't just do it and say, well, we're handing it to the club,
No, I'm not saying government. I'm saying the group that I just outlined.
Yeah, well, it has to come from the clubs.
Yes. I'm saying, but somebody has to make that move to start the whole process.
And then we would have to see how it dovetails into the SKN Athletics Federation, because of course they are already the recognized body. So whatever we do, it would have to dovetail into that. I guess maybe similar to the way how the Football Association works.
But we have a football association here. But that's why I'm talking something similar.
The Football Association dovetails into the FIFA recognized.
Eventually that will happen here as well. It's just that you need that organizing body here in Nevis to get the interest of athletics even higher than it already is.
I agree to a certain extent that it is something that should happen. But the clubs, they would have to come together.
Yeah, they will come together when you're doing the AGM to pick your president, vice president, and so forth. That's where all of them come together. That's not for me and you. That is for them. But somebody needs to start. So that is what I was thinking of. But Honorable, we are running out of time, and I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening and to give you your final words for our listening and viewing audience. Anything you wanted to say to the general public that you haven't gotten a chance to say? Well, free to do so now.
King, it's always a pleasure to be on Van Radio. Of course, sometimes I come here in a different capacity. It's always good to have the opportunity to talk to the general public. Serving the general public has been the honor of my life. I've been doing it for a while now. I came into it as a very young guy. I remember coming into it and everybody kept saying how young I am, but I'm not so young in it now. I've been in it for a little while, and I've learned quite a lot being in this type of position. Sometimes you're in a position to lead, and you learn and you grow as you lead. And that has been the case with me, and so I'm very happy. I don't take it for granted, the opportunities that I have had. I could have been anywhere in the world doing any amount of things, but God has blessed me to be here, and I'm very happy to be here. And the work that we are doing with the the children. It's just the other day I had a conversation with somebody, and I told them, I never really saw myself working in capacity as Minister of Education and so on. Maybe sports, yes, because I always like sports. I grew up I would do any sport as a youngster, and being where I like to build things and so on in engineering and that type of thing, construction and so on. I thought I would have more been in that area. And I said to the person, after coming into education and working in education and working with young people and so on, it's been a sort of an awakening for me. And I like it. I like seeing the joy on the faces of the young people when you're able to do something for them. This time of year when you get to go to sports and see the young people, I enjoy this, So for me, it's been quite the experience, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to continuing, and I'm very happy being a part of a government such as this one that is a caring government. This is a government that cares about people.
Yes.
A government that cares about Nevis and how the people doing. And we take pride in, working on behalf of the people. I take a lot of pride in working on behalf of the young people. I don't take it for granted at all. So to be able to go out and deliver for them. If you look at our football, where it has come from where it used to be.
Yes.
I mean, school football used to keep in Nevis, and nobody even knew that it was happening, much less who won. But now it's a big thing.
Yes.
And we want to get it to the level of where interprimary is, and I think we are well on our way with it. So that is something that I feel really good about, and the guys are pumped up right now. The guys at sports and at education, they're on a high right now because we're going into cricket season soon.
Yes.
And we are feeling optimistic about cricket too, because we think that we can do something similar for cricket. And we've been having some netball. We have the netball academy that we've been having, and we believe that we could bring back netball too. So I think right now, in terms of sports and so on in the school in Nevis, I think we are in a good place. It's not just going to be about interprimary. Interprimary is our flagship event, but we are looking at growing the other sports also, and I'm very bullish and optimistic about it. There's a team that's working with me. They are young people, and they are very innovative and so on, and I'm very, very, happy that we could give them that opportunity. It's an exciting time, to be a part of a government like this that's looking for ways to really improve what we do here in Nevis, improve our way of life in every single way that we can. I think when we came in, we said people matter more, and then we said people matter most, and every single day when I come out to work, I'm working with that mantra that we are working for the people. Every single thing that we are doing is for the betterment of the people of Nevis King.
Well said. And folks, that is such a good note to end on this evening. Join us again next week when we shall do it all over again. Do enjoy the rest of the evening's programming. Then have a pleasant night's rest.